plan. So plan is another term that we need to be aware of. You keep talking about it in the context of all the previous modules that we have had look at. For example, even the very first knowledge area within the BA BOK, it talks about business analysis, planning and monitoring. So BAPM, the first one, business analysis, planning and monitoring, is all about how you should be able to plan continuously, not just once, but continuously. The planning is a continuous activity in the entire development life cycle. So it's all about, as the definition goes here, it's a proposal for enacting change or moving forward. It's about describing the events, the dependencies, expected results, consequences, outcomes, and the resources required. So all of these, it's not just about the task that you would need to do. It's about what are the dependencies among the tasks that you have. And you should also outline the timelines, potential timelines, when you're proposing to finish the task. What is the likely date? It need not be final, but at least an estimated timeline for completing that particular task. What are the dependencies of the task on the other tasks, for example? And if there are any constraints or any blockers for that, in terms of if there is something that is not done before the task, we need to mention those as well. And then who is going to work on the task in terms of the resources? What are the things that are required to be in place before that? Are there any databases that need to be done? Do we have to have tables in the database? Should we have any kind of constraints, the connections points to the database? What about the programming environment? Should we have an IDE, which is basically the integrated development environment? Should it be ready? All these things, these are all the different resources that need to be in place. So we need to be on the top of these when we try and create a plan. And that's why they say that plans are nothing. The plan that you created today might be completely changed, and that's completely useless tomorrow. So because a lot of things might change. So you need to again replan tomorrow. And then again, whatever you've worked tomorrow might actually be wasted by the next week, because it goes through, there are a lot of variables involved in that. Things might change, the business areas might change, the client might change, the customers' needs might change, the underlying technologies might change, the tools that you're using might change, the platforms that you're potentially using might change, the tasks might change that you're proposing, the priority of those tasks themselves might change. So everything is bound to change. So that's why what I suggest is, when I go by the saying that plans are nothing, plans are not important. What is important is planning. Planning is everything. Plans are nothing. Planning is everything. I firmly believe in that, which means you cannot just plan once and say, yes, this is a perfect plan. I've got it, go. Now that's it. We're not going to make any changes. That is a short way to fail. Because when we talk about plans, they're bound to change, and then you should be able to accept the change and then again replan, and then that kind of revisiting of the plan and revisiting and enacting those entire sequence of events, all of those would be important, because that's what it is, planning is all about. So planning is important. Planning is a continuous activity, whereas plan is one specific artifact. So you should not rely on that, and that's why it's really important to keep this continuous activity of planning time and again. And we as business analysts, when we talk about the planning, it pretty much encompasses every activity that we do, right from the time we start with the stakeholders. For example, we are going to discuss the stakeholders in the next few slides. But then when we talk initially about stakeholders, who are the stakeholders? How do we need to interact with them? What kind of elicitation exercises we need to interact with them? The STOP technique, for example, if you recollect, the strategic, tactical, operational. Strategic is if the person is very high level strategic, then you might want to just have interviews. And then the person is in the tactical role, which means in the middle management or in that particular role of tactical aspects of it, then you might want to engage with them on having workshops and prototyping and then observations. And then when they're in the operational aspects, because they're actually hands-on, they know how to do things, they're the people who actually do the tasks on the ground, you might want to engage with them in a totally different level in terms of observing while they're doing, perhaps even doing some kind of activity recording, activity sampling, and all these prototyping, evaluation of those, all of these kind of elicitation techniques. So you're planning there. You're trying to understand what your stakeholders are, at what level they are, what kind of role they're playing, what kind of information they're potentially in a position to give you, and then accordingly you're planning to conduct the elicitation exercise in the appropriate manner. So again, that involves the right element of planning. Again, in terms of understanding or extracting and eliciting the information, you need to understand the needs, the pain areas, the kind of tasks that they do, the workflows, what kind of breakage scenarios, breakdown scenarios that they might encounter in a day-to-day basis, and then how you can support with your product or service, how you can support them in their workflow. So for example, if there are people who are actually doing the scientific research, they have got a certain way of doing things compared to, for example, if you're a professor teaching in a university, you've got a different workflow involved, totally different workflow. When you talk about, for example, a pharmacist who is trying to sell the drugs in a medical department store, then you've got a completely different workflow. So each of these different users and stakeholders have got different needs, different roles, different goals, and different pain areas. So we need to be able to understand each of them, so that when you try and target these primary users in your marketing or even in your product definition, you would then be able to understand how you can best support their workflow, so that they don't have to really learn a lot of things with your product. They're already having that. They don't want to get more pain and more trouble to learn new things. So again, that's where we need to really be smart, and that's where the business analysts role really is very, very important and very, very pivotal in defining the goals, the scenarios, the profiles, the usage context, the user profiles. When would they use it? What is the context of usage? How often do they use the product or application? What are their real needs and not just wishes, right? So all these things need to be specified by us, by the BAs, and then that would become a very, very powerful communication tool and the specification tool for the development team, for the designers, for architects, for testers, and for everybody else to refer to understand our specification, then accordingly try and identify the best solution, and then recommend the solution, and then start implementing the solution and delivering the solution. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be just another solution that perhaps is a mix or a blend of different products and services. So all of these, it's really important. And if you notice carefully here, this is what I propose. This is a model that we came up with. It's called know the needs of the users, design and develop for the users, and evaluate the product by the users. So essentially, of the users, for the users, and by the users. It's totally a user-centered design concept.